Now we are live. So hi everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Gal from PlainID, and I have with me Dileep from Cisco. We are going to share with you today the Cisco story. Dileep is going to share with you with PlainID. So let's get started. Okay, I'm going to start presenting our deck. So today our topic is sharing with you how Cisco has leveraged the PlainID PBAC platform to modernize and optimize all the authorization requirements within the organization. We'll start with a quick introduction. So Dileep, would you like to introduce yourself?
Definitely. Hey, Cal, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. This is Dileep Moturi, joining from Atlanta in US, part of Cisco Systems, Cisco IT security organization, and I'm responsible for driving IAM engineering and architecture at Cisco.
Thank you, and it's real pleasure to have you today on this webinar. I'm Gal, I'm a co-founder and CPO at PlainID, and we have been working for quite some while together, right, on making this happen.
Yeah, it does. It does feel like quite some time, but it's just like almost a year now. But it looks like we achieved a lot. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see what are the topics for this discussion. So first of all, we want to start with the why. Why did you even choose to go on this project? What are the primary business initiatives that drove towards the usage, implementation, and usage of a PBAC platform? Obviously, we'll also review the challenges, so the challenges that led to this decision. Now, when there are challenges and business initiative, not always the answer is obvious. PBAC is one of the solutions that you could have chosen from. So why PBAC? Why a PBAC framework is the right solution to address those challenges? This is another question we will touch. Then once we get all that sorted out, then Dileep, you walk us through the implementation at Cisco. How did you leverage PBAC to your advantage, and go into all those details. We will also talk about what should you be looking for if you are considering, or when you are considering a PBAC solution. So what are the main considerations? Dileep will share with us some future planning with PBAC, and you can expect AI to be part of that. So we will touch a bit more, just a glimpse on how PBAC can support AI, and we'll part with some key takeaways. Obviously, we'll take questions at the end. If you have them, just feel free to share them in the question option that you have there. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, what are the main business initiatives? Now, this is a PlainID general slide. This is basically a collection and summary of what we get from the majority of our customers. Why do they choose a PBAC solution? What are the main drivers? And it typically starts by enabling the modern business, right? So whenever you want to move faster, you have a new initiative, then PBAC, authorization in general, and obviously PBAC is supporting that, needs to be a ready-to-use solution. It can't be a homegrown or additional overload on the development and engineering process. The same as you would consider authentication, that needs to be ready to use. And if it needs to be ready to use, it needs to have that enterprise level quality. So that would be a major business initiative to get started. The second one is, of course, around security. So whenever security becomes a greater concern, then authorization, and supported obviously by PBAC, is there to support that last gap that remains between managing your identities authenticating your identities, and now really managing, controlling, and governing all those connections between identities and the data and the services they can access. And data is also mentioned here like the last topic, but one of utmost importance. Why? Because eventually everything leads to data, even if it's from an application, from an API, from a microservice, doesn't really matter. And we actually see that nearly 70% of all PBAC initiatives are around access to data, whether direct access to data or indirect access to data. It's all around data. So eventually securing data needs to find itself also looking at PBAC. So this is the general initiatives. Now I will refer to you, Dileep. What were your business initiatives that led to this project? If you can please share.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I think like these three callouts on this slide very articulately defines what went some of our decision-making process. The problem sets is what we had as such, right? I'll give some examples. When we started looking at, or when this requirement came to me or my team in the security, IT security side, the problem we're trying to solve for business was one of our functional unit, business function unit, we call it as CX or customer success in our language. What this means is like this is the organization responsible for supporting our customers across the globe. So our customers are enterprises, large scale, mid scale, as well as federal governments, right, and service providers. So we do. So the employees in this organization have access to sensitive customer data, and we want to make sure that the right people are having access to right data at the right point of time. So yes, securing the data access it was number one. Number two, from a security, again, that also goes back to your second point, which is reducing the risk and tighten the security. So we want to make sure that we implement these controls at a fine-grained level, because traditionally we were using a role-based access control model, but over the course of the time, it became an unmanageable or unable to scale to the new business demands what we have, right? When I say new business demands, I'm sure like it resonates with a lot of you on the call. There are, with growing data nationalization and a need for data segmentation, the business also has to respond to that, to make sure that we are also supporting our customers and their needs in terms of like how they want us to secure their data that they're trusting with us. So that is a business need. There's a need of the hour for Cisco is like go back to the market rapidly with an ability to demonstrate that yes, we have a mechanism or systems in place in the back end to support our business to securely ensure that the customer data is secure, and we are able to, in fact, legally write a contracts with our customers to make sure that we are securing the data in a way where how we are promising them. So that was very important, either to gain more business or to renew our existing business with our customers. So in summary, yes, all these three are the reasons that kind of led us to find a solution that can scale, that can be a modern, and we can quickly deploy and go to market with that solution.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. So there were the business initiative, but obviously there were some challenges as well. So can you share a bit on the challenges that you faced and at that time, and also the business risk that was a potential, result from all those challenges?
Yeah, the challenges were like one, the complexity and the scale at which we are dealing. Right. So Cisco operates almost in every single country. We have, if not hundreds, we have thousands of customers. And as I said, like these customers I'm talking here is about large scale enterprises, service providers, as well as federal governments. Right. So you can imagine in the back end the number of the systems that we have in place that the support process goes through, right? All the way from a customer opening a case, processing, supporting the customer to the case, processing RMAs if required, analyzing their issues, the logs what we capture, the data what we capture, and doing a research on the cases that goes back to our engineering to improve our products. So there's a lot of data sitting in across multiple systems, either on-prem or on cloud, sitting on hosted on multiple different types of technologies for various personas, business reasons, so on and so forth. So that's the picture. That's what is, you can imagine the back-end IT landscape and the complexity that we have. So the challenge there is like, number one, how can we build a solution that can solve problem or that can help us to implement controls across various heterogeneous technology systems at a large scale? And should we be able to scale? For example, like now, when we are bringing this new authorization model, so we are getting into the path of the user, like, hey, any impact or any delay that we introduce with the additional authorization will impact our user experience, and that will in turn will impact our ability to support our customers and our customer SLAs and the satisfaction scores. So the business was very sensitive to the change at the time. So at the same time, they want to implement a control. So that's number one challenge. Number two was how can we build a solution cost? Like, we don't want to go back and change every single system. So we want to see what can build a solution in a way that it can be reusable, it can be expandable to reduce the cost. I can't go back and change every single system. So we want to bring a centralized way of implementing it. So that's one challenge, one of architectural challenge I'm talking about, right? And finally, the business challenge is like, if you're not able to meet these, make these systems in place, we had a risk of losing business. There are certain customers who would have walked away from us if we don't have these controls in place. So it was time sensitive and a challenge in the way to scale and build a solution from a technology standpoint. And any failure of this system would result, will have a direct impact on our ability to support our customers and then the revenue that is generated through our service organization.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dileep. So you chose PBAC. Now, I just want to share with the audience a quick reminder about PBAC, what PBAC is. So PBAC is a policy, it stands for Policy-Based Access Control, an advanced access control framework that supports authorization. PBAC aims to simplify the overall process of managing authorization policies across the enterprise. It provides visibility, central management, simplicity, and standardization into the whole process. Policies can be applied to control access to applications, to services, and to data, of course. And they provide that granularity that looks on the identities. So who are the identities that can access? Second, what identities are accessing? So what's the level of access? They are trying what records, what data records, and so on. Policies can go to a very low level, a fine-grained level, I might say of granularity. And then when access is valid, like for example, time of day, location, or any other contextual access. So this is really in very short explanation what PBAC is. And the question is now that we would like to answer or to ask Dileep is, why did you choose PBAC? What were the main reasons that led you shared the business objective, you shared the challenges and the business risks associated with them, and that led you to choose PBAC. And the question is, why?
Yeah. So why PBAC? As I said, like one, I think some of the challenges I presented, like ability to create one single system that we can consistently apply policies. And when I talk about policies, we're foreseeing a variety of policies of various types, and then the policies has to be executed based on a variety of attributes. So these attributes can be as simple as the location of the user, all the way to the status of a case or a. I'm just taking an example, right? So and then the job role, job definition. So we have like about 50 different attributes that we consider in these policies. So an extensive list of attributes, so an extensive list of decisions that has to be made. So we need to have a central policy engine, so where we can comprehensively implement these policies that can be governed and managed effectively. So that's led us um, to go with an idea of a centralized policy engine that enables business to quickly deploy policies. And at the same time, it should also have an ability to simulate the policies, verify the policies, and govern the policies. And then those policies can be distributed to the downstream applications. So the downstream applications, the level of effort of the changes on the downstream applications are minimized, wherein the centralized policy engine is responsible for bringing those attributes, defining those policies, and maintaining those policies, and also acting as a decision point, supporting the enforcement of those policies in those applications.
Okay, excellent. And a year after the decision, it seems like you made the right one. So
It is, yes.
okay, so now let's go on and see how you have implemented the PBAC. So this is a bit more technical slide, going into the details of the architecture. So please take us through that. Yes.
So yeah, this is I would say, very simplified slide. It has some jargon here, but not to scare folks. But a lot of times I get this question, what is this PBAC system PlainID is doing in your architecture? How is it different from your Active Directory or your DO or IDPs, right? So for many folks, or even the architects that work with me from the application teams, they do ask me, hey, what is the difference between all these systems, and why should you, or where should we use these services that is offered by your team? So I typically use this slide to present that. So in order to achieve a zero trust architecture, so we are applying the controls at various levels, right? The level one is authentication. That's where you can imagine the applications in that box, yellow box that you're seeing there, and all these applications can be homegrown applications, they can be APIs, they can be databases, they can be SaaS applications, so on and so forth, right? No matter what, you can imagine that yellowish box is where we have our critical data or assets that we are trying to protect and secure. So we're applying 3 levels of controls from an identity and access management standpoint. Number one, authentication that goes through our, we use DO, Cisco's DO, in the backend supported by Active Directory. And that's where we do a single factor, multi-factor, and a risk-based authentication, and apply some controls there, like verifying the device check posture, so on and so forth. So once the user is authenticated, then comes role authorization, a coarse-grained access control there. We are using an IGA solution that provides a role-based access control for these applications. And the number 3, that's where we bring in PlainID or policy engine, central policy engine, through which we apply a policy-based or attribute-based access control. So the applications make a call to the PDP policy addition endpoint in the runtime. So they get a runtime authorization. So at that point of time, what kind of an access this user have in the context of the particular application? Can they see the data? Can they can they edit the data? And even within the data, we can also apply controls at the column level, and identify those columns and mask those PI attributes if required, so on and so forth. It all depends based on who is the user, what is the location of the user, what is the status of those cases, or I'm just taking case an example, it can be anything else, right? The asset types, the asset statuses, so on and so forth. You can imagine all those different permutations or combinations of those attributes, and the runtime decision is made there from a policy decision point. So, and that information will be sent back to the applications, and then enforcement happens at the application level. Sometimes we also implement the enforcement at our API gateway. You can also imagine our API gateway is one of the application for me, and where we apply the controls or the enforcement at the gateway level. So that's a very high level of a simplified version of the architecture. Again, you can imagine each of these components sitting on both on-prem and on cloud, applications hosted on-prem and cloud, applications of various technologies, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And I think this slide actually emphasizes two very important aspects of a PBAC solution. One, the ability to work together with existing IAM infrastructure, whether it's the IGA systems in place, system of records, the IDP, authentication services, and so on. I think this is very important to continue the authentication, the identity and authentication process all the way to enforce access on the fine-grained level in data and services and so on. So working together with the existing IAM solutions in place is important to consider. And second, and you mentioned that as well, the ability to enforce access in multiple patterns, because as we know, there can't be just one place where enforcement happens. Especially in an enterprise level organization, there are many different technology patterns, and you need to consider different patterns for enforcement, as is shown here. In the API gateway, that would be one. Directly in the application, that would be a second pattern, and possibly even on the data level. It's not highlighted here, but obviously this is another pattern to consider. And that's the part of the importance of having a central PBAC system that can support all those patterns.
Correct. But just to expand on that, Gal, I think one again, for a practitioners on the call, or anyone who is listening to this, the change is the biggest. How do we drive the change is the biggest factor for success, right? We can't expect a big bang approach in large scale enterprises. So we have to go one step at a time. And the reason I'm also, I think, trying to bring that story here is not all the applications are created equal. Every application will have different levels of risk. So for example, now, based on the risk of that data or the value of the asset you're trying to protect, you might apply one of these three controls or all of these three controls. For example, some applications are open to everyone at Cisco. All that I apply for them is an authentication. There are applications which provides access through an explicit access grant model. So wherein we provide a role and only when you can apply access to those applications, right? And there are applications which are very sensitive and we have very sensitive data, and that's where we apply a fine-grained level access control. So because every time you're applying a control, there is a cost for integration, there's a cost to maintenance, so on and so forth. So as a security practitioner, we should always think about what is that we are trying to protect, what is the cost of the asset or the value of the asset we are trying to protect, and what is the cost of the solution we are trying to solve the problem. So always the value of the asset should be higher than the solution we are providing there. So that's my takeaway. That's how when we approach any business team, that's where we start our conversation. And that's how we have to be successful. That's how we should gain the trust of the business, saying that yes, when we work with the security team, they're going to provide me a solution that helps me to make sure that I'm securing my asset. I'm not going to spend too much on ensuring my assets or my inventory or my applications, right? So I think that's a very important thing we should always keep in mind, and how we are deploying the architecture. I'm sure every enterprise have made a lot of investment on existing infrastructure and systems. So I can't expect that we'll throw everything and then go to a big bang approach. So I think having this kind of an architecture and flexibility in your architecture is very important to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really an excellent point. And, I would add to that maybe it would be good to consider the platform, the PBAC platform, as a set of tools that enables you to
Yeah,
use the right one where needed, right? Because
exactly.
there's not one pattern that fits all.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you have more legacy systems, you're not going to change them. Obviously, doesn't in most cases doesn't make sense. But so you would need one set of tool for that. But for the newer, modern architecture type of base type of systems, then you can use more modern patterns that provides better control. So yeah, absolutely. To consider, not just one solution. And also, I think we can see, looking back on authorization system, that used to be one of the main blockers in adopting authorizations in general, because typically there was one pattern and applications had to be changed. And that's a very high price to request from your organization. And today, that's not the case. You don't need always to go and change the application. There isn't just one pattern. There
Yeah.
are multiple deployment patterns that are optimized to the way applications, services, and data are consumed and operated within.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have all this technology in place. How did you leverage that to your advantage?
Yeah. So as I said, like number one, when we started this journey, we had a role explosion because we are using roles to segment access to our data. So we end up having hundreds of roles, and it is really difficult to govern those roles. Our users ended up having access to almost all of the roles, and the approvers who are responsible for them ended up granting access to almost all the roles. And then each of these role scopes started broadening or widening, and there's so much overlapping between those roles. So it became really complex, and that also causes the challenge was the productivity of our engineers. Like let's say a new engineer joins the organization, like what kind of access he or should have from day one, it's not really clear. Number two, when we do a access right sizing the access, we end up removing access for our engineers, and that will impact their ability to support our customers. So we're trying to right size that RBAC. That's what we want to achieve, and we were able to do that because now we're able to streamline the roles, but the requirements of finer grained access control are now pushed to my PBAC system. So roles are really a meaningful level supported by a PBAC system. So in that way, we are able to achieve best of both the worlds, right? Uh, a data owner or a manager can clearly articulate what access the employees have in their teams and what does it mean from a risk standpoint, and they can make an appropriate decisions easily. So that was the first thing, and then number two was, of course, like once we start deploying this, as I said, like we have various technology of applications platforms that we have to cater to. So by deploying this centralized policy management, and we enable integration patterns. Few examples of applications are, we had applications like Salesforce, we have applications, we have APIs on Mule Gateway, we have Snowflake, we have homegrown applications, we have data stored on our AWS S3. So we have to have a common policy applied for the users who are using data or consuming this data from all these different systems. So a consistent experience for user is required. So when they move from one application to another application, they don't see any challenge in accessing the information they need to solve the problem. So that's where we leverage this centralized policy management engine, and anything that we built a pattern or integration pattern we built for one type of application, we're able to reuse that for a similar pattern of application. So let's say once I solved a problem for API gateway, we were able to rapidly expand the model to multiple APIs on the API gateway. When I say API, you can think of API as a collection of data we are providing to our users. So we're able to rapidly expand and apply the policies on different APIs of different applications. So similarly, when we took an example of a Snowflake application as an example, we have multiple data marts within Snowflake. So once we are able to solve the pattern, here is a pattern to enforce a control on Snowflake. So we're able to expand and reuse that and expand that to multiple data marts on Snowflake, right? So that's a reusable and consistent way of implementing the policies. So we're not reinventing the wheel again with every single application that I'm working with. So that will also drastically reduce the time to adopt this new architecture. And I'm able to achieve that with a small team, right? So that's number two, like how can I reuse the models? How can I reuse the skills that are being developed from the people standpoint and able to consistently apply these controls that are predictable and manageable and for easy governance. So that's number two. Number three is about, reducing the development cost of the app teams. So now that we standardize this model, like now we were able to offload some of the development work on the app teams. So the changes are minimized on the app side because we are standardizing the model on the enterprise side on what changes is required to enforce the controls. And lastly, faster time to market. Now that once we have mastered this art of creating the policies, also the time it takes initially when we started, like when interacting with the business, how do we develop a policy? What data we have to bring? How do we make a decision? How do we model the policy? And how do we model all the way from a logical model to actual implementation model? That's a learning cycle. Now, once we did that, once we figured it out, we're able to expedite that, work faster with the business teams, faster with the application teams, and we're able to. Now that I'm also using a built-in package from PlainID, and of course, in the backend, PlainID team was helping me. That they're part of my extended team. I would say I'm very happy to say that a great collaboration from PlainID team. Whenever we ran into issues, they were there, responding us, helping us solve the problems. So we are able to quickly deliver the solution and able to meet our timelines to release the business offering. End of the day, our goal was at Cisco is to release a business offer and go back to our customers to say, hey, we have these controls in place, and here's a new level of service that we are ready to sign with you guys in order to secure your data. So that was what our ultimate goal is to release a business offer and demonstrate these capabilities to our customers. So we're able to achieve those goals.
Okay, excellent. And thank you for sharing that. We are starting to get some questions, so we will answer them. I'll just share those with you. So there's a question here. In the architecture diagram, it shows the policy engine is talking to HR system to get HR attribute. Any reason why that was not pulled from IGA tool? Let me go back to that slide.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There are some sensitive HR attributes which we did not bring to IGA. We want to make sure that considering the sensitivity of the data, we don't want to bring it to IGA. Because once it comes to IGA, it would get exposed to a larger team of administrators. So such sensitive information we are directly bringing from HR, and then we're not even also storing in PlainID. So these are, you can imagine that, that's the main reason.
Excellent. So, and there's another one. So the other question is, could you please elaborate on how you manage different types of applications or use cases, application data and APIs? Specifically interested in understanding centralized policy developed and deployed by dedicated team responsible for policy management to all those different requirements. So that's one part of the question. And the second part, would appreciate your insight and experience with policy lifecycle management. Who owns the policies and how change management of policies is taken care of? Yeah,
so we are still learning. I mean, to be honest with you guys, we're still learning that part. but I can tell you like where we are walking towards. Right, I cannot claim we mastered that part of the puzzle yet. So for now, it is a co-ownership between my team and the business teams and the security team. So these are three teams who owns the policy. So you can define a policy being defined in plain English, written somewhere, signed off by business owners and the security trust organization, and that becomes an input for my team. And the engineers or analysts in my team takes that policy in a Word document and then translate that policy in the context of an application, working with the application teams, because the policy should be also translated into technical assets. Okay, this policy will be applied for these assets or these applications. That mapping will be done between my team and application teams. So we created a framework on that translation of policy into assets. You can imagine also that is also a working document. Typically, that you can imagine a spreadsheet that has a policy of assets, and then I think one of the slides that Gal was showing earlier, like users, assets, conditions. That's how we create a document. That becomes a IT policy document, which will be version controlled, and that becomes an input to our developers. So they take that IT policy document and then and then use that for developing the policies in the system. So that's how we are managing it. But in future, and now one of the reason why we also went with PlainID was because in the future we want to make it as a self-service. So we want business to directly come to PlainID and they can view the policies, which is really good. Like one good thing I liked about PlainID is like the UI what they're providing, where the business user they don't have to go to a piece of code, but they can visually see the policy that is configured in the system. They can visually see, hey, what is the logical condition of the user group? What is the logical condition we're applying for the assets? And what are the conditions that are being enforced on the policy? So at this point of time, we are giving that access to our business owners to where they can come and check the policies that are being enforced. But in future, we also want to give them ability to create that IT policy document to that level, but we're not there yet. And that's what we also want towards in future.
Excellent, thank you. And okay, so I think there was also the first part of the question was how are you able to manage the different type of application use cases? I know that you are reusing policies between the API, the application, and data enforcement. Would you like to elaborate on that as well?
Yeah. So imagine this: there's a policy, and the policy will be applied to various applications. So what we do is like we bring those applications, and within the applications, you can break down the application into assets or attributes, right, on which you have to apply this policy. So we map those applications and attributes to one common policy, and we define the logical conditions there. And that's how that is an exercise that where we have to spend on the analysis side, which we are. I think initially it took a lot of time for us to figure out how do we communicate with each other between the teams, between STO, Security Trust Organization, between my team on the IT and the business teams. Now we all have to speak the common language. We all have to use the same technology. That took time for us to figure out that part and come to a common sense of, hey, what does this policy mean? What does this attribute mean? Like, what does this means? So we were able to also, what we did is like all the learnings from that, we started creating some documents in our SharePoint site. So tomorrow when I start working with a new application, we are already providing them, hey, heads up, by the time this is what we need from you, here is how we will develop policies, sample examples. So we're reducing the time to train the new application teams. Again, like this is the same problem I used to have with when I'm onboarding applications to SailPoints of the world or any other IGA products of the world, right? So we have to bring those application teams and my team to speak together on the same language. That used to take a lot of time. I think we are trying to figure out a way to minimize that with a better documentation and trainings that we are creating for the application teams. Because what we ended up creating is like we ended up creating documentation or training focused on the roles. For example, like, hey, application business analyst, here is your document. We want you to learn this stuff or think about this stuff before you start working with Meta. And similarly, like for business teams, we're giving them some, I would say, some templates or some predefined inventory of the information that we need from them. So they're more prepared, and then we will move much faster in translating the requirements into IT design or solution design.
Okay, thank you. And we are getting more questions. So some new questions. What is the entry point into flow number 3, the PBAC, PBAC 1, PBAC ABAC? What set of applications have the runtime authorization controlled here? So I think the question is about what applications are working directly with PBAC, ABAC.
Yeah, I'll give 3 examples. Entry point is like when the user logs into that application, the application is making this call. So you can think about me as a user logging into an application ABC, and trying to access the data. So the application in the backend is calling the API. It calls an API, a third-party API, to retrieve the data on behalf of this user. So the application passes the user ID, the token, back to the API. At that time, what we're doing is like now the API signature is now has embedded PlainID policy decision point. So PlainID provides me a PDP endpoint. So we are converging the application API with the PDP endpoint. So the decision is made at that same endpoint that application is calling. So it passes the user ID, and then automatically it gets a response back. Hey, this user, here is the data. Or if the user cannot, or if that based on the user attributes, if the user should not be able to see the data, we will mask the data and send the response back. And then we give a response back. Hey, this user is not authorized to see this data. So the entry point happens through the application the way it's happening today. It can be a homegrown application. It can be a SaaS application like Salesforce. So when a user logs into Salesforce, the Salesforce in the backend is calling. What we're doing is like in Salesforce, a little bit more complex. So we are building that intelligence locally in the Salesforce today, because Salesforce cannot do an external authorization in the current architecture what they have. So we're bringing some customization and using some webhooks within Salesforce to make these calls to an external system and make the decisions. So a lot of customization went in there for Salesforce example. Similarly, if someone is trying to access a Snowflake through a SQL editor, so we are pushing the policy for Snowflake into the Snowflake's own access control model. So the policy enforcement is happening within Snowflake. So user logs into a Snowflake SQL editor, tries to, let's say, self-start from a table or a view, and then in the backend, using Snowflake's own security model, what we did is like from PlainID, we are pushing the policy. These users have access to these roles for these views or objects or columns, etc. So we're using the Snowflake's native row level, column level controls, but the policy is residing within PlainID that we are automatically pushing into Snowflake. So that's how. I mean, these are the 3 different examples. I think that covers a native homegrown application, a SaaS application, and a database like Snowflake.
Absolutely, thank you. And last question I have here for now, if you can share your experience around policy as code, if you have already started working with it.
Say that again, Gal. Sorry, I missed the question.
Policy as code. PlainID provides a policy as code capability, so policies can be built in the UI or they can be built as code. This is also supported just as a way to manage the life cycle of policies. Yeah, right?
That's right.
The question is if you can share your experience if you started working with it.
No, so far policy as a code we're using in one use case, which I'm sure in future we'll expand on that. But one use case I talked about is now in the Snowflake example, like we're pushing the policy into Snowflake level, right? And also that's one use case, but the good use case was also is about how are we doing our CI/CD. So the policy is developed at the lower environment, and we are pushing that policy as a code to higher environments. So we don't end up doing all the configurations in the production about the policy creation, so on and so forth. So that's one good use case I can think about where we're using policy as a code.
Okay, thank you. And another question that just came up, but maybe I'll take it because to give you some time to rest. So the question is, were you using your IDP for doing PBAM implementation, or trying to see if policies were enforced through JOT-ID token, or using enforcement APIs in PlainID? So currently, and please correct me if I'm not accurate, currently the majority of implementation at Cisco is based on one, API level enforcement, second, application level enforcement, and the third one is directly on the data, Snowflake level enforcement. JOT, like mentioned in a question here, enforced through JOT-ID token, that's a pattern which is not yet leveraged in Cisco.
We did a POC with one of our PU. We didn't go live with that yet. We tested it. We did a proof of concept, and we got the results what we were expecting. So in that example, we're using Okta as an IDP, and then we're trying to secure an application, and then using the token, we're able to pass authorization. We did a POC, but we didn't go live yet.
Okay, so it will be soon.
Soon sometime.
Okay, so let's move on with the slides, and I really appreciate all those questions. Those are really excellent questions. So we spoke about how Cisco, Dileep shared with us the architecture and how they have leveraged the PBAC. I would like to now focus on what you should consider when you choose a PBAC solution. So the first item here is really to focus on centralized management of policies. As you obviously know, policies are all over the place. You have policies that support enforcement for applications, for API gateways, for service mesh, for data platforms, and so on. The main challenge is how to control all those policies that are all over the place. Additionally, the policies are in many cases expressed in different languages, whether it's a SQL language or technology-specific language or whatever. So centralizing the management of those policies and providing standardization. So first of all, they are visible and understandable in a consistent way. That is very important capability of a PBAC solution. And that leads to the second line item, which is coverage, right? You can't have a PBAC system that only supports APIs or only supports data, because you would get to a point that you need to expand that. And coverage is very important. That central management platform that can support the APIs, microservices, applications, and data, all those policies that are today managed in a distributed way, in an unorganized way, and a not standardized way. So those two, in my opinion, are two very important items to consider. Another item, which is not less important, is as ready to use as possible. Those of you who have been in the identity and access management space for quite some time, you know that's not necessarily the easiest technology space to be in. And we have invested a lot in making all those identities managed well and then authenticated well. So there's a lot of investment there, and we left authorization as the last investment in the space. Why? Because it is considered more complex than others. That's why you should be looking for a simpler solution where possible. For example, and we'll see that in the next slide, PlainID provides authorizers, which are enforcement points that are fit for technology, providing as packaged as possible solution, reducing the overall development engineering overhead. Identity awareness, never forget that the access control authorizations is spoken in many different contexts, but eventually identity awareness is a target to provide the identity context as part of the enforcement everywhere, whether it's when accessing data, accessing APIs, accessing services. Enforcement cannot be done if the identity is not there, if the identity is not known. And that's a very important aspect of a PBAC solution. And by the way, we can call that PBAC, ABAC, PBAM. We can talk about the differences. That's another webinar. But in the solution which you are choosing, it needs to have those elements. And the last is, of course, it has to have advanced access controls. That means level of granularity and the dynamic aspects for authorization. It can't be static. It can't be just coarse-grained. That is not sufficient for today's technology, especially when we will see that when we will see next how authorization supports your AI initiatives. And I'm seeing that we are starting to run a bit out of time, so I won't be covering this slide. Those of you who know PlainID, you're familiar with this slide, and this shows how we are collaborating and supporting technologies that already exist within your technology space. I'm going straight to this one, and Dileep, back to you. So what is the future for Cisco with PBAC? What are your next plans?
Yeah, I think like with the success what we had in our CX or customer support organization, now I have more demand coming from other business units. So there's more demand for the service what we are offering. We're going to expand that beyond our customer success or the CX organization, like the commerce, sales, and finance organizations or supply chain as well. So that's number one. We have a roadmap for next 1 year, working with various application teams and further drive these controls across the enterprise. And then two, yes, as in the wake of this AI, we're also working with some of our business units on when they build their models, how can we provide an authorization as a service in the backend for those, so that we can implement some controls at those AI models to secure the data, right? So that's a very initial stage where we're trying to do some proof of concepts, learn, and then figure out and provide a solution. Because unless I have a solution, like I know, like with AI, even the business teams, they don't want to wait for IT. Like they'll go and solve their own problems before it becomes a wild west. We want to be on the top of the game to come up with a model that we can say, hey, here is a secured way of using your rolling out your AI models across the enterprise.
Thank you. So I'm just going to touch on that last point, AI. Obviously, this is not a full webinar on an AI, and we are planning to do that next month, to have a series of webinars just focusing on AI and how PBAC can support your AI. But just to give you a bit of a glimpse into what that looks like, generally speaking, in an AI pipeline, there is a question that is the user is asking, and then data which is supporting is fetched in order to support that question, to provide the answer and eventually the answer. So you need to consider authorizations at each and every interaction. First of all, question: can the user ask the question? If I am an HR person, I shouldn't be asking questions about finance data. That's not for me to see, right? Second, the data, the documents which support the question, well, maybe not all documents should be available to me, right? We need those access controls to still be applied, even if it's a a brand new AI application or agent that we are building. And the last, of course, when the question is then provided or generated, maybe part of the question should be masked. Maybe it's part of the answer, sorry. Maybe the answer has some PII data or data the user should not see. Now, all of this is already supported by PlainID with our current tools, but we are also working, and very soon we are going to announce a component which is dedicated for this area. So there's a lot to expect and a lot to still to come from PlainID. And that leads us to the last key takeaways. Dileep, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely see, as we are takeaways, like I'm expecting that a PBAC authorization will become a mainstream requirement in the IAM architecture. Much complex problems we have to solve in future with AI, the problems will become more complex. So I would ask all our practitioners to be prepared, geared up for that.
Okay, thank you. I agree, absolutely agree with you. I think every organization should consider PBAC. If you are an organization that is considering identity, first security, identity awareness as part of your overall security controls, if you are considering modernizing whatever application and starting to implement AI-based systems, for sure you need a PBAC system, because that's really the only way that you can secure any one of those new initiatives. And that we are at time, which is excellent. And Dileep, I really want to thank you for your time and everything that you shared with the audience we have on this webinar, and I want to thank everyone that have joined, and we hope to hear from you after this webinar if you have any more questions that we can address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. Nice.
Bye.
Bye.